Good afternoon, everybody, and a warm welcome to all our participants and, of course, our panelists on this session on the BRSR core assurance and readiness. I think it's an important topic which is in front of a lot of sustainability, compliance, and other leaders of corporate India. We have a very good panel today, actual practitioners who are doing this for the past few years, representing very good organizations, and also a senior leader from a consulting organization. So I think it would be a very useful session for all of our participants. Participants, do feel free to put in your questions in the question box. I'll keep looking at them and pass it on to the most suitable person, or you can even directly target a particular person that you would like your question answered from. Before we start the session today, I'll just give a quick introduction of myself. I'm Jangoo Dalal. I'm the CEO and co-founder of GovEVA. We started GovEVA about 5 years back. We like to call ourselves a sustainability Sherpa for corporate India and the globe, because what we do have is a very robust digital ESG platform aligned with deep domain expertise and partnerships. Today, on our panel, which I will go around and ask themselves to introduce themselves, we have, and I'll do it alphabetically so that we don't miss out on anyone and I don't put any wrong steps. So let's start with Abhishek Tripathi. That's a brief snapshot on Abhishek appearing on the screen, but Abhishek, over to you. Please introduce yourself.
Thank you, Jangoo. Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Great to be here on this panel. My name is Abhishek, and I'm a partner with GT Bharat. At our firm, I take care of the ESG advisory practice. So my roles and responsibilities would include helping my clients on all aspects of sustainability, because sustainability is the bigger umbrella, and that's why I'm using that word. Sustainability is something which is integrated with the business. ESG is a way of doing business, and CSR is an outcome of business. So that's how they all stitch together. The work that I do spans across reporting strategy and assurance, and I'm helping supporting multiple clients of the firm, GT Bharat, in reaching their sustainability goals or covering the ESG journey. I've been working in this space since 18 years now, much before all this was there. So those days, ESG would essentially mean a EHS audit or a child labor monitoring or a working condition monitoring at a factory. So it's a significant evolution from where we were to where we are today. Thank you.
Hey, thanks, Abhishek. Moving forward, we have Leena from ICICI Bank. Leena Pillai, again a veteran in this area. Leena, over to you to let our audience know a bit about you.
Thank you, Jangoo, and an absolute pleasure to be in this webinar. I am Leena Pillai. I lead the ESG and CSR function at ICICI Bank. I came into sustainability without any ESG pedigree, so I did not have any conventional degrees in ESG. I grew through the business challenges, the willingness to learn, ask questions, and of course, a strong sense that this is important for the organization. I was instrumental in developing the reporting for the bank, the integrated report, the ESG report, as well as the BRSR. We have been also doing a reasonable assurance for the last 2 years as mandated by SEBI. So it's been a journey. I have been with the bank for 19 years, where I have done various roles, including supporting the MD's office in an executive role, contributing to policy making, as well as overseeing the bank's ratings, the credit ratings. In these 19 years, more than close to 8 years now, I have been working in the sustainability space for the bank. Thank you.
Thanks, Leena. And now over to Pune and Mayura from a hardcore manufacturing kind of a conglomerate, Kirloskar Group. Mayura, over to you.
Hello, good evening, everyone. I'm Mayura Bhusari. I work with the Kirloskar Group. I work in investor relations, finance, and sustainability domain focusing on translating our ESG commitment into on-ground action. My profile includes hands-on experience on providing support for BRSR reporting, materiality. We have been doing limited assurance with our group of companies, plant level energy conservation drive, carbon footprint reduction, and also biodiversity initiative across the Kirloskar Group. Kirloskar Group includes Kirloskar Oil Engines, Kirloskar Ferrous, Kirloskar Pneumatic, and the holding company Kirloskar Industries. Being in manufacturing sector at Kirloskar Group, environmental conservation is not just a mandate, but it's our way of business, it's way of sustainable business growth, and we have it in our DNA for last over a century. I believe finance and reporting and sustainability domain is a powerful enabler for a scalable as well as measurable sustainability outcome, and we are very much focused on those. Thank you.
Thanks, Mayura. Let's move to Eastern India, the RPSG Group, which is represented here by Saket, who is their group sustainability head. So, Saket, over to you, sir.
Hey, hi. Thanks for having me here, Jangoo. I've been in the markets for the last 25 years, taking care of corporate finance, capital markets, and ESG. In GovEVA Group, we have 10 lines of businesses, and from power to chemicals and from music to FMCG. And we have been equally focused on each and every business, or one is the business part, and second is the ESG part on the sustainability imperative part of it. And we are closely working not only on the reporting part, but also embedding sustainability in each and every part of the decision making. And last couple of years have been very exciting for us, and we think next couple of years we can showcase, more new initiatives. Thank you.
Thanks, Saket. So, friends in the audience, you must be by now pretty convinced that we are a very delightful and accomplished panel this afternoon. Just to set some context, the BRSR, was first mandated by the SEBI way back in FY 22-23. So, in this financial year, which is 25-26, we'll be in the fourth cycle. As a lot of us know, GRI was the original inspiration, but SEBI and the Ministry of Corporate Affairs and various working groups have done a fantastic job of localizing it. And personally, having seen multiple disclosure formats across the globe, I think what we have in India in terms of the BRSR is one of the better, more succinct, easier to manage and compare kind of a framework. And now with the world moving towards an IFRS consolidation phase, what we understand is SEBI has also started discussion groups on how the BRSR can also align with the IFRS S1, S2. I think that's a great move because I just read an article yesterday which said that if you look at the number of jurisdictions/countries which have started adapting the IFRS S1, S2 standards, by now they represent about 50% of global GDP. So I think our regulators have been very, very proactive. And as part of the BRSR, we have the core, which goes across 9 main pillars across all of the 3 categories of environment, social, and governance. We have emissions, waste, water, energy, key social and governance metrics. And I think SEBI's idea, which it has achieved quite admirably with the core metrics, is number one, it drives transparency because minute you make it number-oriented, numerical, metric-oriented, which makes it then comparable, it obviously drives a complete set of behaviors, which ultimately leads to a sustainable business practice. And from day one, the good part is it's also globally aligned because those of us who have done the core and the metrics, they are all finally brought down to intensity metrics, which are then adapted and adjusted for purchasing power parity. So even if a Kirloskar or an ICICI reports a core metric in terms of intensity, and then once it's the PPP flavor is adapted on it, it becomes a globally comparable kind of metric. This year, Corporate India, the top 500 have to do the assurance audit. And I think by next year, it's going to be all the top 1,000. So that's a big context for our audience in terms of what today's topic is all about. Before we dive in with our panelists, we have a short poll to get the audience going and get their view so we can keep this whole thing very focused. So, audience, you have a quick poll of about five parameters which you just need to quickly rate on a score of 1 to 5. And once we have that in, we'll show it to everybody, and we as a panel will try and focus our attention to what's important for you. So you'll have the poll coming up. Here it is. Each of you will have this on your screen. Please go ahead and rank each of the parameters very quickly. Abhishek, I will like to start with you. One of the first questions I would like to ask you as a consultant is, to a lot of people I meet, there's a bit of confusion about this whole thing about what is assessment, assurance, partial readiness, reasonable assessment. So can you throw some light on what exactly is this assessment / assurance / readiness, whatever is the terminology, and explain it to our audience?
So, assessment is there's still ambiguity between what is an assessment and what is an assurance, right? And let SEBI answer that question because they are the best place to provide the guidance on that. But I'll talk more on the reasonable and limited aspects. So the difference between a limited assurance and a reasonable assurance is when you talk about limited assurance, it's about having those SOPs and the processes and the systems in place. Reasonable assurance is a step forward wherein the reporting entity also needs to have a evidence trail and audit trail and supporting documentation and evidences available for all the data and information which is being reported as a part of the BRSR or more on the BRSR core. So that is the difference between limited and reasonable. Assurance readiness would essentially mean before the assurance becomes mandatory on you, you start preparing for it. So when you start reporting your numbers, you start calculating and measuring your environmental footprints, get the evidences also on file because they would be required when the assurance becomes mandatory. Also, more reliance is given on the third-party evidences generating off from a place which is outside of your operation. That is always more reliable. So all of this becomes important from an assurance perspective. But let SEBI give the definition or clarity or the difference between assessment and an assurance.
Having elaborated the difference between the two nuances of assurance, as an auditor, assurance provider, and also an enabler, the last 2-3 years, what are the top 3 or 5 metrics that you've seen that enterprises, corporate India typically tends to falter over or have some trouble? And why do you think they fail over there?
Sure, Jangoo. So, Jangoo, as you rightly mentioned, this is the fourth year of the BRSR, right? And more or less, most of the reporting entities or the companies for whom the BRSR is mandatory now have learned it. There are guidances available from SEBI side. There's a lot of reading material available. There are multiple reports available in public domain. So there's a lot of knowledge available in public domain. But based on our experience, we have seen our clients struggling on 3-4 key aspects of the BRSR core, the 3-4 key KPIs of BRSR core. And this would essentially include the GHG footprints, the MSME data, trading houses reporting on the transactions with the trading houses, and job creation in small town cities. Right. So let me start with the GHG footprints. The struggle or the challenge is more on incorrect mapping of the emission sources and ensuring completeness of the emission sources. So more often what happens that there are emission sources within the operations of the company and they get missed out or they do not get mapped adequately. The other challenge would be selection of the wrong emission factors. Say, for example, if there's a requirement from a localization perspective, using a global emission factor would not be the right approach. There's a lack on the boundary setting. So what to report and what not to report, again, is a challenge. So that is from a GHG footprint. There are challenges from a MSME classification. We have seen inconsistencies in data there. There is lack of supporting documentation also on the MSME classification. Then comes the trading houses. So we have seen while there's still ambiguity, while SEBI has given a definition of the trading house, but there's still ambiguity. We see clients facing that challenge on what constitutes a trading house, and those misclassifications or misrepresentations uh, lead to lack of sanitization. The last one was the job creation. So say for example, if the head office is in a metro, say for example Delhi, and the operations are being run from a small town, then more often what happens that the companies misreport the corporate office as the main operational area, and then what happens is that the job creation in small cities, that reporting is not done properly. So these would be three, four challenges where companies do struggle from a reporting and also maintaining the audit trail from an assurance perspective.
Yeah, thanks, Abhishek. Let me move to actual practitioners. Maybe Leena and Mayura, you could answer in sequence. Is there anything when you have been doing this, some of the assurance pushbacks that you might have got from an assurer auditor? Was there anything which surprised you? Some reactions, rejections? What did you think about it? Anything which comes to mind? Leena, you want to go first?
Sure, Jangoo. I have to tell you, we come from a highly regulated sector. We are already intensely audited. So audit just runs in our bloodstream. So it's something that whenever there is any kind of statutory or regulatory reporting to be done, audit is definitely something that is ingrained in all our processes. So we did when we started the whole BRSR process, we did ensure that we had certain systems in place. There was data getting collected. When the draft circular itself had come, we had got in touch with respective teams to, onboard them, to help them understand why this data is required, and that it is also going to go through an assurance process. And as part of assurance is as good as an audit. And it needs to be approached similar to a financial audit, I would say. So one needs to put SOPs in place, have roles and responsibilities, have audit trails. As Abhishek mentioned, some of these aspects need to be addressed. So this is something we did go through that process even before we got started with an assurance. And we did also a limited assurance at one point to be sure what we are doing is appropriate. And if there are any gaps in our processes or any learnings that we need to incorporate before we go into a reasonable assurance, as well as from a reporting perspective, that needs to be addressed. So we did have a sort of a dry run, creating a mock BRSR, looking at the data, the trails, the trends that were happening, how the data was getting reported, is there proper maker-checker process involved, and then starting the process of doing a reasonable assurance. So if you ask me about red flags per se, I don't think we got any red flags, but it is also important to help auditors understand a sector's nuances. Like being a banking sector, some of the aspects may not really be relevant and maybe also not feasible to report. So, say for water, for a banking sector, it is more about human consumption of water. If we have to be monitoring water consumption across our branches and offices, it's going to be extremely challenging. We have a distributed network, 7,000 branches. It's not easy to do that. So we, of course, we went through the ISF guidance. 45 liters per person per day is what we applied. So we were reporting at a higher level there. So these are things that you learn as we go about doing that, understanding what is material in our disclosures, how much effort we need to put where, and having clear SOPs in place so that auditors also understand how we are approaching these aspects. So red flags, of course, will come if there is no clarity in the within the organization as well of what to disclose, how to disclose, and why we are disclosing or why we are not disclosing as well. So these are aspects that we did work through, and that's how we approached the entire assurance process before we got started. Mayura, over to you. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Leena. And I agree with Abhishek, and it's a learning curve. At Kirloskar Group, this is again our fourth year reporting BRSR. There have been initial first 2 years was data gathering phase, then SOP, setting SOP, as Leena said, is very important. There are certain things which we learned at the limited assurance phase, wherein, as Abhishek said, the emission factors used specifically for GHG were a red flag for us. Certain companies were using X international numbers, certain companies were using Indian. Also, within the electricity and fuel mix, what we saw, there are, being in manufacturing sector, fuel, diesel is not just diesel. There are, 3 or 4 levels of high speed diesel, low quality diesel, and different type of fuels used. So even bifurcating that helped us, give a correct GHG footprint data. So that was one of the key points for us. Again, training related with ESG, that was a learning curve, because a lot of training happens at supplier level, at supplier dealer conferences, but how to time these trainings, if there is a dealer conference happening for 2 days at a stretch and they have had a sustainability session for 2 hours, then recording these trainings was a learning curve. We had to tell the teams that if you have done a sustainability, let's say in suppliers, they have a contest that who is, whose footprints are lower, or who has shown, some efforts, or who have put renewable energy for carbon footprint reduction. So all these things need to be recorded, need to be reported correctly. That was another learning curve. And when it came to assurance stage, then providing trails for such trainings also was, we had to set SOPs for. Also, I think one of the key challenges that we face, that there are different levels of energy baskets. We have, traditional fossil fuel based energy. We have renewable energy, and there is one type of energy which is sort of waste heat recovery, which lies between renewable and non-renewable. Reporting that and convincing auditor that we are not burning extra fossil fuel to report this was another challenge for us, and to convince that this is neither scope 1, scope 2, where to put that, going back and referring to a lot of statutes for giving this energy the kind of focus that it needs, was also a learning for us. But setting up SOPs always helps. Again, at a various plant location, like for one company we have 6 plants. I think digital tool helps a lot. If you have all your, let's say for scope 2 GHG emissions, your electricity bills are put on a portal and there are auditors, reviewing that data, that helps. It's a learning curve. SOPs for trainings, SOPs for a lot of labor practices also helped us. And red flag is there is still confusion on certain, as he said, that trading houses reporting, people are still confused. Every time we have to have this dialogue with our teams, there's a sort of data fatigue, I would say, with the plant locations, because on ground people are the same people providing data for reporting. They are same people providing data for assurance also. So every time you have to take your stakeholders in confidence and have to tell them that what are these different processes in reporting. So that has helped a lot too.
Thanks, Mayura. I think I'll just pick on your last point in terms of what's happening in today's digital AI-driven world. So increasingly, we are moving towards a concept where you start assurance at source and audit at source. So, right from the time today, AI and ML technologies allow you to, when you're capturing any activity data, like the kind which you mentioned, you could now make it audit and assurance ready at source itself, by in terms of having a document which is uploaded, then AI engine reading it and cross-checking what you've put in over there. So yes, lots of challenges rightly mentioned, but I think technology is also stepping up to do that. Let me just move this around a little bit and go to Saket. So Saket, at the end of the day, we do these reports from a regulatory requirement point of view, but one of the big consumers of this is the capital markets, right? Investors. And with your background with Citi and other capital market businesses, and now in sustainability, how do you think disclosures like what they are there in the BRSR as a whole and the metric-driven cores, how are they useful? How are they viewed by the capital markets, investors, etc.? Saket.
Yeah, thanks for the question, Jangoo. So the ESG reporting standards in last couple of years have gone up because what you have to understand is the top 100 company, which is uh, mainly the large caps, and below 100 would be mid caps and the small cap. The maturity is very different. And when we are talking about investors, we have two pool of investors in normal. We have the foreign investors and we have the domestic investors. And the foreign institutional investors, they have their own ESG teams, and some of the large domestic fund houses also have the ESG team. So at the end of the day, the non-financial or the ESG data has to make sense for them. So the quality of data is very important. So first thing is, in some of the cases, still the Indian company on the BRSR, they would be reporting on a standalone basis, while some companies they do it on a consolidated basis. So that is a one part. Second part is if you really look at some of these funds, what they are looking for is high quality data so that they can slice and dice the data because at the end of the day, they have to make a decision whether to invest in a company or not. So the non-financial reporting also plays an important is an important factor for making that decision, right? Because at the end of the day, if you're a IT or a software company, then a lot of the non-financial indicators have to be high quality indicators. If you are a manufacturing company, of course, on the GHG water and the waste front, some of the data has to be meaningful. The third part is what is interestingly happening is there's a lot of analysis has been done is being done by the American and the European investors. They ask you for loads of data and they go through the data and they ask you a lot of questions. So what finally happens is that they take a call on the company whether to invest, whether if the company is listed company, then of course they can invest in the equity of the company. But if the company is kind of raising money from the foreign markets, which is in case of bonds or fixed income, any of the fixed income instrument, that data plays a very important role. So if you really look at the S&P, Moody's, some of the global rating agencies, they kind of bake in all the ESG data in their analysis. So from my perspective, capital markets are very cognizant of this. The second way of thinking is if you really look at last 2, 3 years, a lot of the companies with the ESG kind of a theme have got listed, whether you're talking about a recycling team or a renewable team or a EV team, and they command a very high multiple. And they were actually not making money last couple of years, but the capital markets have given them the money, which it means that the theme is very dominant, and wherever the theme is, wherever companies are making money, investors are happy investing in those themes. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Saket. Very interesting insight given your background over here. Again, let's get back to the auditor and get into some nitty-gritty. So, Abhishek, could you, for the audience, because you're kind of the headmaster who's going to audit a lot of companies, what exactly is audit-ready evidence that you as an auditor would look for? What documentations do you usually demand? And how do our audience, who may be doing this for the first time, prepare themselves? What exactly is this evidence that they should be gathering before they call in someone like you?
Sure, Jangoo. So, audit-ready evidence essentially would mean something which is clear, verifiable, traceable to documentation, and traceable in terms of traceable to documentation would mean that supports the calculated or reported KPI, and that also aligns with the BRSR core requirements. So we as auditors always expect primary source documents and they're always more reliable. Like I mentioned, the documents generating from third party. Let's take an example since we are talking a lot about these GHG calculations. So let's take an example about GHG. So now when we start an assurance process, as a rule, we conduct walkthroughs. The first step is to ensure that the emission sources have not been missed out. Right. So when we do a review of the entire, say, for example, a production process, there would be multiple points in that production process where there could be a possibility of a GHG emission. So that walkthrough is done to ensure that the source of emission is not missed out. The second important factor would be the activity data records. So the fuel purchase bills, the electricity bills, meter readings, and the consumption logs. Third would be the emission sources. So we discussed this as well. The emission sources would be which is if there's a localization required, the local emission sources, especially in terms of the electricity units consumed. And official references to these calculations have also to be made. Then comes the entire calculation on how scope 1, scope 2, or even scope 3 is being calculated, right? Boundary definition, as I mentioned earlier, what to report and what not to report. And then the last thing is the verification of this entire audit trail in terms of verifying each and every activity, which leads to the final reporting, and always validating this with evidences being generated from third parties. So something which is clear, verifiable, and traceable to the source documentation.
Thanks, Abhishek. One of the other banes of or the headaches or challenges for a practitioner, especially in a multi-company group like Kirloskar Mayura, would be coordinating across not just different companies, but within that also different cross functions, right? To get the 160 odd disclosures of the BRSR together, a lot of cross-functional coordination is required. So, any suggestions, good practices that you put in place for our audience in terms of how does everyone, how do you coordinate across different groups, different organizations, ensure everyone's on the same page, not just for disclosing, but ensuring that what they're disclosing is kind of audit assurance ready?
Yeah. So thanks for the question. I think setting up SOP is very key. Certain things like policies which don't change every year. So you are ready with policy related question and participation in various forums. So we talk, typically what we do, the questions which can be answered as a practice in the company are answered first and very much in hand. And then what happens is there is continuous monitoring of the, especially the quantitative data that is to be reported in Principle 6 and Principle 3 particularly. That helps a lot. So when I'm at a 6 months board meeting, I know what my intensities look like. I don't want to be at a 12-month fag to see that suddenly my intensities have grown and I couldn't do the measures beforehand. So continuous monitoring is important. And as I said, we have to make sure that the people who are giving the data know clearly why this data has been asked and at what forum it is being used. Because at the end of the day, every month they give data, and again at the assurance level, when somebody comes to visit the factory, they have to take them through the factory operations, and as Abhishek said rightly, that show the sources of emission. So there shouldn't be data fatigue on them that every month I'm doing this, at the end of year again I have to do this. So sensitizing the source or sensitizing the people who are giving that information is very important, and aligning these stakeholders is a key for timely and correct preparation of the report as well as assurance.
Hey, thanks, Mayura. Hey, Leena, back to you. As you rightly mentioned, you're from a highly regulated sector, and everything that you do is audited, assured, goes through a eagle eye lens kind of thing. Now, coming back to ESG, BRSR, what is the input that you would give to the audience in terms of keeping evidence trails ready when you come? Is it like a year-round exercise or something you gather end of the year? How do you ensure that you know who owns the data, who's checking it? So I know SOPs play an important part, but on a practical point perspective, when you go about executing, implementing, what are your learnings, Leena? Anything to share with the audience on that?
Yeah, happy to share. Thank you for asking this. This has been, I'm sure this would be part of every organization's journey. So when we start, of course, first foremost is to be able to understand who will be the owner of that data. ESG is something that spans across departments. So there is no single department that can provide all the information. So first step is to be able to identify roles and responsibilities and who is owning the data, and having spokes in those teams who can actually provide the information. So why a spock would be important, like something like even a basic thing like an HR data, the kind of information that is going, there is not one team within the HR function who is aggregating all the information. It's rests across various teams within the HR function itself. So they need to coordinate among them, understand whether that data is appropriately getting calculated. There is no mismatch in the data that is getting reported, because something that is being taken from one source should match up to another area where it is getting reported. So these are things, checks and balances that they need to put. So the first step I would say is to identify SPOCs, have very clear roles and responsibilities identified for those people. There is, of course, a level of learning, as Mayura mentioned. You need to onboard them, do training, help them to understand why they're doing what they're doing and why it is important for the organization. Because as an organization, even if we are looking at GHG emissions, somewhere organizations need to have a decarbonization roadmap. They have to align with national goals. There is a net zero narrative that everybody is talking about, and every organization will take that step. So it's important for organizations, every team member who is part of this data aggregation journey, to understand why they are doing this. After that, of course, there is this whole step about getting them to put their SOPs in place, because they own the data, they understand the data better. They need to work on the SOPs. SOPs help in multiple ways. One is about setting the boundaries for reporting, the process for reporting, how the data is getting aggregated, and what are the backups that are going to go as part of that. So where it is getting aggregated, where they are going to, we keep that repository of information. The SOP is the first thing that every auditor asks. So even I'm sure even Abhishek will agree, when his team comes for an audit, the first thing they would want to know is what are the processes. They would want to engage with the teams who are going to provide the data. If the teams don't know why they're giving the data, they will not be able to correlate with what the auditor is asking. So that's where we actually have to start the first step. And then, of course, backups is something that every team understands, because it's similar to a financial audit. You need to maintain invoices, looking at bills, utility bills. You need to have all those things. One of the things that we understand as part of this journey, which really helps, is having digital systems in place, because it eases a lot of effort for the person who is on the ground. I can give you some simple examples. As part of this journey, of course, a lot of service providers keep coming and talking to us about what are the kind of niche areas where they can provide some support. So we have also seen agencies who are able to aggregate unit level data by just giving them the consumer number. They have the connect with the utilities. They are able to collect that data through APIs. So these are services that are already available in the market. So everybody is finding a business opportunity in these areas as well. So somewhere, having digital systems that can then enable these kind of integrations and data aggregations, and also having proper maker checkers. The maker checker role really helps, because once they have to sign up to that number, which is going to go into the annual report, everybody understands the seriousness of that. So these are things that can be really enabled through a system. And I think that really eases the load on the auditor as well as the auditee. So that's I think those are a few things that I would really want to mention.
Hey, thanks, Leena. Yes, Saket, I'll turn to you. You worked with organizations like the Aditya Birla Group and now RPS. These are organizations with a lot of legacy businesses, historically, organically growing businesses. And when it comes to ESG, BRSR reporting, and things like those, and multifunctional requirements, obviously you'll have companies and people and departments of different vintages, which may sometimes cause misalignments and things like those. So what are your views on cross-functional collaboration, on legacy, growing, different kinds of, I would say, different levels and maturities of organization that you might have seen in your group businesses?
Yeah, thanks, Jangoo, for the question. So the most important part is, I think so, one should only look at the assured data, because the moment you talk about the assured data, it gives a lot of comfort to the investors or the external stakeholders, because it's not only investors who are consuming the data, but also your maybe the value chain partners, or the bankers, and some other external stakeholders. So one is the assurance, the second one is the quality and the consistency, because what is happening is globally, if you really look at least for people to make a decision they need to have some years of data, 2, 3, 5 years of data, which is on non-financial part. For mid-cap companies, it's a little difficult because they have not been reporting the data. The third part is, yes, you are right. We have 10 lines of businesses in Sanjeev Goenka Group, and the maturity is very different. And let me talk about the value chain. Our chemical business, where we are one of the number one players in the chemical what we manufacture. I think so. We have a dichotomy whereby the large players, they don't want to share the data where they are a part of the feedstock supply. On the other hand, we have a classic case, the smaller guys, they're happy to share the data, but you have to handhold them. So there's a lot of work which we do with, depending on which business are we talking about. But if you really think about on the power generation and distribution part of it, although that value chain is a little complicated, but it's still manageable. So the most important part is, I think so, what Leena also mentioned, have the data on a digital kind of platform. That's one. Second, have the data assured. And the third part is every 6 months collect the data, and have hygiene checks. Thanks.
Thank you, Saket over there. So, one of the things is with audit and assurance and assessment ready data is that the board now gets involved and they have to sign off. They're worried about what's going into the annual report, part of the BRSR kind of thing. In your experience, I'll just go around with Mayura, Leena, and then Saket and even Abhishek. What is it that the board is really looking for? What is the pressure they're putting on sustainability teams? With assurance coming in, is the board getting more involved? And as a result, is ESG and sustainability becoming a hotter topic at the board? You want to go first, Mayura?
Yeah, sure. It's always a hot topic, especially for manufacturing companies. Board is involved, not just from risk angle, but as I have said, that it's more from sustainable practices, because monitoring energy is key. No, even from environmental footprint point of view, there are certain initiatives that we run at the group, something like a biodiversity, because there are some mandatory requirements and there are some requirements that even if we are doing it mandatory, let's do it in best way. So board is involved in these decisions. They want to know the update. And as I said, it's not just that the report or the parameters are being discussed at the end of the year. Either a quarterly or 6 monthly interventions are important. Looking at how the journey has been, or looking at the decarbonization plan, even if it is for 5 years, where do we stand? And it is very important from board's angle is managing your expansion as well as managing your intensities, that both things should not be roadblock for each other. And what are the, even for expansions or even for going into new businesses, what are the key factors we are considering at the beginning so that all the sustainability parameters are maintained. So board's involvement, asking questions has improved and increased a lot, and we are happy to report, because that also puts continuous monitoring and analysis pressure on the teams, and there's no surprise at the end of the year.
Thanks, Mayura. Leena, what's been your experience with the board's involvement?
So I completely agree with Mayura. It's a hot topic, and it definitely gets discussed at the board level. The board has also now started understanding the importance of ESG. It's not limited to just the BRSR. As Mayura mentioned, it goes beyond. It is about adopting best practices, about understanding what needs to be done, looking at the alignment with national goals. So if India is committed to maintaining a certain target, how the bank can also contribute towards that. So this is something that is an ongoing discussion. Specifically from a BRSR perspective, of course, one of the things is about consistency and transparency in the disclosures that are being done. That is definitely paramount for the board, and they are very clear that we need to be absolutely sure and consistent in our data disclosures, even if it is a learning process and it needs to evolve over time. But there has to be disclosures which are transparently done. So this is something that the board is very clear about. So signing up to the BRSR is more about, of course, looking at whether a proper process has been maintained. Is there oversight from the management on these aspects? How the disclosures have been put together? And one more aspect would be the materiality part. What is material to a company definitely needs to be in focus and needs to have KPIs. So this is something that the board definitely focuses on.
Abhishek, what have you seen as a consultant, external party, in terms of, do you guys get called up by the board to explain? Typically, when you're reporting financial numbers as an auditor, you do have a view, or the board has a view to the auditors. Does it happen with non-financial ESG metrics, assurance also coming, Abhishek?
Yes, Jangoo. So while my today's role is more on the assurance, but I'll talk about my experience of doing the reporting, the BRSR reporting or the sustainability reporting. And more often when the report is presented to the board during board meetings, there are 3-4 things which are important. And the board members, I've seen board members kind of getting into those details. One is, since this entire information and data goes in public domain, so there's a lot of emphasis on the credibility of the information and data. If it's assured by a third party, independent third party, that gives more credibility. Second is, I have seen board members and especially the independent directors are doing a comparison vis-a-vis the previous year. So if a KPI has gone up or gone down, what is the reason? And that question is thrown to the CFO or the CEO, asking them on the reason why that number has gone up or gone down. I've seen that happening in real life. Third is the independent director, especially while they're reviewing or seeing a data on the screen in board meetings, at the back of their mind, they're also remembering what they saw in the other company, right? Especially the intensity and per rupee turnover intensity. So those questions are being asked by the board members, independent directors also. And these questions go to the CxO, the CEO, CFO on what is the reason for such intensity up and down or. So the board members are increasingly looking into this data. And as we go ahead, this is going to increase further.
Thanks, Abhishek. Folks in the audience, if you all have any questions, please put them in the question box. Panelists, we have about 4-5 minutes left. And one of my experiences with a lot of companies is not all of them are as prepared and systematic as ICICI or Mayura is. So here's a very interesting question for all of you. So assume you have a fellow sustainability professional, compliance professional from a company who's going to do the assurance for the first time this year. And they say, hey, listen, I've been hit by this. I have to get everything going. And could you give me like a 30, 60, 90-day plan? What would be the top advice, 2-3 things they would tell them to do so that they can get through a good assurance process and people are happy with the outcomes? Let's start with, say, Leena, then go to Mayura and then Abhishek, just to go around.
Yeah, sure. So if the journey is just starting, it's definitely going to be a challenging one. First 30 days, I would say one needs to first find the right stakeholders, get the BRSR data, where it resides within the organization. When we start the journey, you will realize that suddenly there are some data that is sitting in the financial statements of the bank, where which can be relied upon. There is data that is getting reported to board committees, to any of the senior management committees. So there is data there in the organization. It is just about bringing them together and knowing who are the stakeholders who are actually owning that data. So first step would be to look for that. The next 30 days would be, I would say, engaging with the teams, getting them to put their SOPs in place, being clear about what they're reporting and getting that signed off by their department heads. So that is important. The department head also needs to understand that this data is going to go out in public and they need to be sensitized about what is getting reported. and it is a board approved reporting in the annual report of the bank. So, and it's there for for the future. So this is something that teams will have to be sensitized about. The next 90 days, I think they will have to look at benchmarking, looking at trends, understanding what their peers have disclosed, so that if there are any gaps that they need to identify, I would say sustainability is one area where people are happy to share knowledge. It is not, there's no competition involved here. It's very clearly a sharing, caring journey, and everybody is happy to share about what they are doing. So this is something that you can always reach out to your peers to understand how they're reporting and what are the processes they may have put in place for all this. And in the first year, I think one should not really seek perfection. It is just about being there. Your presence is more important. And it's a journey that you need to walk and keep enhancing yourself year after year. So trying to seek perfection in the very first year is something that one needs to be very sure how they want to go about. Thank you.
Very relevant, Leena. Consider it like a journey. Take small steps, get stakeholder buy-in, and look for data if it exists already within some or the other system of documentation. And again, the world we are today in terms of digital AI, it really does help surface some of these things. At GovEVA itself, we now have tools where you can upload a whole bunch of document and it just fills up relevant parts of the BRSR or GRI, whatever for you, and then you can take it from there. Mayura, any thoughts on a 30-60-90 plan for people?
Yeah, Leena has already laid it out, so pretty much covers everything. From documentation point of view, as she rightly said, finding where the data lies, because for manufacturing operation, a lot of this data is already shared to the state pollution control boards. So you already have those evidence trails. Just keeping it at one place or on a digital platform helps. And first thing I would say, first point is sensitizing the key stakeholders, training them with either online or a platform with assurance, the company who's doing assurance that what are the data trails they are requiring is important, keeping the data required, and as Leena said, peer benchmarking would help so that your numbers are not totally off the industry, would also help.
Abhishek, any thoughts from your side?
Yes, and I'll do that very quickly. So Mayura and Leena spoke about it in detail, but I'll put it all together and very quickly. First thing is identify the custodians of the data information, build their capacity, define the audit trail requirements or the audit requirements or assurance requirements, start collecting information and documentation from day one. So when a number is being reported, the supporting documentation should be put on file on day one. Conduct self-reviews, check alignment with the BRSR definitions and the BRSR requirements. Self-review, perform a gap analysis, right? Sanitize the data and the information reporting data information, sanitize it. If any error or gap has been identified, rectify it, and then prepare for assurance, get all of that together. So that's a nutshell of.
Sure. Saket, I knew he had to run for a flight, but if you're still there, any last inputs from you before we wind this up, Saket? I think he's already moving. So I'll just sum up what we discussed, and we have got a few questions, which I think we'll take it offline. We'll reach out to the audience through emails and other things. I think we've had a very interesting discussion this afternoon from stalwarts who have been there, done that. I would urge the audience, as Leena said, in our space, there's a lot of sharing and caring. So please feel free to reach out of any of the panelists if they are from your industry. And of course, we at GovEVA are absolutely available with you, and I'm sure GT is as well. I would just make a 2-minute pitch that most of the things which our panelists said today, we've been able to successfully digitalize on GovEVA. So one of the things which Mayura mentioned about data fatigue, and I think that's one of the banes of any ESG program, which is you have to go again and again for the same data to someone. And more importantly, that person has another day job and is, by the way, giving you this data. So if you can crack that problem, which we have been able to do successfully at GovEVA, it alleviates a lot of problems. And then things being assurance ready, audit ready from day one, getting the right emission factors, all of that's been digitalized. So thank you everyone for participating today. One of the other things which we will do for all of our panelists and audiences, send across an email with a link to you. We have created a small self-assessment tool for you. You just have to answer a few questions and you would possibly know where you are on your assurance assessment readiness journey. So it's a tool which is completely self-use. It gives you an answer and a gap analysis there and then. It will come into your inbox. Feel free to use it. And if it's of any use for you to go forward, we'll be more than happy. I think we are on the bank for the last last 2-3 minutes. There's one question from Nitin which I will take. Assurances apply for only the first 250 companies according to the market cap this year. I think it's for the top 500, right, Abhishek?
Yes, Jangoo.
So, Nitin, that's your answer. It's for the top 500, and there are many such questions. We will take them offline on emails. Thanks you once again to all the audience for participating and for all the panel members, Abhishek, Leena, Mayura, Saket. Thanks a lot and look forward to keeping in touch. And I hope everyone had a good 1 hour on this busy Thursday afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.